Hello and welcome to episode 347 of AvTalk, a very special episode because I am joined, as sometimes, with...
Jason Rabinowitz.
Wait a second. That's
okay,
not
fine.
right.
Okay,
Jeremy
that's
Dwyer-Lindgren, welcome back to the show. Jason is off in Seoul right now. He'll be dialing in a little bit later in the program with a special Seoul report from him and Seth Miller. They're wandering around the city together or separately. Who knows at this point? But they'll have something to share about their travels and what's going on there a bit later in the show. It's been so busy these past couple of weeks with the Dubai Air Show and all of the order news and everything that happened there, as well as some time pressures on our end, that we haven't had a chance to fully digest the preliminary reports that came out regarding a few of the high-profile accidents, unfortunately, in the last few months. So Jeremy has graciously agreed to join this episode, and we'll walk through what we know so far about the crash of the UPS MD-11 that occurred earlier this month, the impact at 36,000 feet between a United 737-8 MAX and what we now believe to be a weather balloon, and the Cargo Air Act 747 runway excursion in Hong Kong. First up, we'll start with the UPS crash in Louisville. The NTSB released its preliminary report last week, and as part of that preliminary report, they released a 6-image sequence from an on-airport CCTV camera that shows pretty clearly what exactly happened to the left engine. And looking at that series of images, I mean, the first thing in my mind, Jeremy, is if not for the same reason, but the same photos, American 191 in May of 1979.
Oh, absolutely. That was the first time that that 6-photo panel was released, and I think anyone who's followed aviation over the past several decades made that connection immediately. It looks almost the same exact thing, and obviously the photos are very dramatic and very telling, but they certainly, the first thing that you think of is that the American DC-10 crash in Chicago, for sure.
The image, obviously we've put a link in the show notes. Feel free to click through there to both the image series, but also the full preliminary report if you want to read through that yourselves. The first image shows the aircraft off the ground just barely. And the second image shows the aircraft off the ground just barely, and the left engine departing the wing, still generating thrust and basically beginning to flip over the aircraft. So one of the things here is that the force that the engine is generating leads the engine to continue and go over top the aircraft and end up on the right side of the aircraft. So that's why the engine ended up where it ended up in relation to the runway, which provided some information to us at the very, very beginning of the investigation. The rest of that series shows fire engulfing the wing of the aircraft as it continues without that number one engine. We don't know much about what happened to the aircraft after the engine departed, specifically about the other operating engines, what systems were still operating. That wasn't necessarily included in the preliminary report, but it was a catastrophic event enough that the aircraft just could not maintain altitude.
No, it's hard to imagine that there wasn't an ingestion of some sort and failure. The MD-11, like most tri-hullers, was certified to operate on a single engine. So in theory, much like the DC-10 accident back in 79, was in theory survivable. Obviously, like many things, the Swiss cheese model, a series of things came together in just the right way that didn't pan out. We don't know exactly what happened here yet. As Ian said, certainly suggests that to me that there was a reasonably good chance that at least another engine also went out. I don't think the plane one of the details that the report shows from the FDR, flight data recorder, was it didn't exceed 30 feet AGL, which matches with the little bit of video that we did see before the report came out. One of the things that the report did include was information around the pylon and the engine fitting. So, kind of how it attaches itself to the wing. And the report detailed pretty extensive, they were able to find and locate pretty extensive fatigue and overstress damage on the pylon and the engine mount that indicated that where the failure is likely to have started. And that information is what prompted the grounding that lasted for a few days.
Exactly. Well, it continues on, and we'll discuss that in just a moment.
Yeah.
I think it's worth reading from the report specifically here, the NTSB saying, quote, examination of the left pylon aft mount lug fractures found evidence of fatigue cracks in addition to areas of overstress failure. So the overstress failure is the actual breakage of that piece as the engine separates from the wing. So that's what the overstress failure is. The fatigue cracks are cracks that form over many, many, many cycles and build up and can lead to overstress failure. They continue, quote, on the aft lug on both the inboard and outboard fracture surfaces, a fatigue crack was observed where the aft lug bore met the aft lug forward face. That doesn't mean anything without a picture, which is in the preliminary report, so you can kind of get your bearings on what exactly we're talking about and how these pieces attach to the aircraft. But as Jeremy mentioned, the MD-11 and subsequently the DC-10, of which there were still enough in operation to make an emergency airworthiness directive, those aircraft have been grounded pending inspections and any corrective actions that might be necessary. The news initially was that they would do these inspections, and if anything was found, they would make some repairs. But according to FreightWaves, Eric Kulish is the managing editor at FreightWaves, had a piece out this week that says any quick return of the MD-11 DC-10 fleet is fading, that the Boeing initially believed that the inspections would be non-invasive and be able to carry it out relatively quickly, but they now believe that more invasive inspections are going to be necessary, and getting any replacement parts and performing any replacement maintenance is going to take some time. So it doesn't sound like the MD-11 fleet or any of the DC-10 fleet are going to be back in the air anytime soon.
It feels increasingly possible that this might be the end of the road for the DC-10 and the MD-11 fleet, depending on how much it costs to make that repair, whether or not it's feasible, how extensive, how many more examples they find of these fatigue cracks that, as Ian said, have been building up likely for quite some time. It's hard to imagine that this is the only frame that has it on either.
I think the one thing that gives me a bit of pause is that the DC-10 fleet especially is a bit important because the DC-10 makes up a large collection of the very large air tankers. I mean, we're talking about 10-tanker air tanker, the firefighting aircraft. And those are incredibly important for fighting wildfires, not only in the US, but in places like Chile and elsewhere. So losing that fleet, which isn't huge, but is hugely important.
But it's instrumental, particularly with the loss of other VLAs, like the 747 didn't pan out. There isn't anything else at the moment that can haul anything near the amount of retardant that the DC-10 carries. And they've been converting more over the past several years. So it used to be one or two. I regret that I don't have the number immediately off my head, but I believe they have more than that now. And it's off-season to the extent that there is an off-season anymore. Off-season for the US, but as you said, they're going to Chile, they're going to Australia, and they would normally be helping with the work in those places. And they're offline, and there is no replacement for that. The next closest thing, the MD-80s, and the C-130s are, I don't know, I believe somewhere around half of the load that the DC-10s can carry. There just isn't a replacement.
There's just nothing that comes close at the moment. There are other things in development. There's the system that they're developing for the A400M, but even still, I mean, there's just nothing that comes close at the moment to the capabilities of the DC-10. So hopefully they can at least get those back in the air. On the bright side, I guess as far as timing goes and things like that, there are 2 DC-10 air tankers in heavy maintenance at the moment. So they're already stripping the planes down. So at least they've got a head start on being able to put them back together, assuming they can get those inspections done and get the aircraft back in the air.
Right. Also occurs to me, I don't have to include this part necessarily, but how many air tankers are left on the military side on the 135s? Now, I can't remember.
They're all retired. Yeah, they're all retired.
From the U.S., yeah. I don't think it's just the Meta had a few, unless they replaced them. My understanding is there were still a few hanging out there.
Oh, in private, yeah. There's a few out there,
and a few foreign KC-46.
Well, the 46 would be the 767 based.
Gosh, what the hell was the MD?
KC-10?
There it is. Thank you.
We got there eventually.
How many numbers can I think of?
Just start saying numbers. Just start saying numbers, and it'll all work out. Yes. Yeah. So the U.S. Air Force retired them all. There are a few out there for contractor work that do contractor work still, and there's a few foreign non-air tanker aircraft, and there's also the Orbis Flying Eye Hospital, which is an MD-10. So not great to have those aircraft stuck on the ground, and hopefully they'll be able to figure that out and get them back in the air as quickly as possible. Let's move on to United Flight 1093, which on initial reporting,
that's a curious one.
could have been anything, and the most wished upon set of circumstances was magical space debris. And as it turns out,
I say, is that a wish upon a star? I don't know. I don't want a star coming through the windshield of my flight, I'll be honest.
No, but I think what most people wanted it to be,
yeah,
what it ended up being was much less exciting. The preliminary report from the NTSB doesn't provide a definitive answer for what struck the windshield of United Flight 1093 at 36,000 feet somewhere over Utah. But
it does suggest that there is a pretty short list of things it was going to be. And it turns out that there was a weather balloon that had left Spokane a few days earlier that had been loitering right in that area, right at that altitude.
Exactly. Right at that altitude. And there was a nearly reciprocal heading between the aircraft and the windborne GSB weather balloon. Not long after this began to come onto reporting, the CEO of Windborne said, "Yeah, it was probably us," and provided some data to back up that claim. The NTSB preliminary report provides even more data, which indicates that it was in fact the weather balloon. Now, we should get specific here in saying it is likely not the actual balloon, nearly certainly is not the actual balloon that hit the windscreen of the 737. Right. These particular balloons have a sand ballast that hangs below the balloon. And we talked about sand ballast a few months ago at this point when we talked with the World Gas Ballooning Champions about how they adjust their altitude. And this works very much the same way on a much smaller scale, because this is a few pounds of sand rather than, much, much more using ballast for 2 human beings. These particular bags are filled with sand and are about the same size, roughly, as the impact to the windshield on the 737. So anything that you hit, and Jeremy, you brought this up before we hit record, is, if it had been something from outer space, it certainly would have gone through the windshield, not just smashed it.
Yeah, there's no way. It's really hard to imagine, as I guess thrilling as some people found the idea of space debris to be, something coming with that much momentum, that much force, not going straight through the windshield. Whereas
these windshields are good. They're not that good.
They're not that good, but they can withstand the impact of, I believe they're certified to up to 4 pounds for a bird, which is by bird standards pretty big. And they have had birds up at that altitude. There's plenty that migrate up that high, which is wild to me. But when it looks like the shape of a sand ballast and damages in the shape of a sand ballast, and everyone says it's probably sand ballast at some point.
It's probably
sand ballast.
What's interesting here is that the NTSB report notes that while it hit the first officer's windscreen, and while that windscreen was severely damaged and shattered, it held pressure. The aircraft never lost pressure, which is just, a testament to how well these things are built, that it was able to shatter multiple panes of glass, and it still held pressure.
I did not know how complicated these windows were until this incident came up, and I went down the rabbit hole of how exactly are these things built. And they're, as you'd expect, they're multi-layer, 3 panes of glass. Some of them are rated and certified for structural, which is crazy. And on top of that, they're made of not just glass, but vinyl and urethane. And those layers, when you combine them together, along with some moisture seals, general coating for rain, stuff like that, you end up getting this incredibly strong piece of material that can take a bag of sand at probably quite a bit of force and just keep on trucking.
Yeah, it's just the United 737 was moving at 395 knots over the ground at about the time it struck that bag of sand.
Now, see, Laura could run that math pretty easily, but she's not next to me. She can tell you pretty quickly how much force that is.
We'll have to get her to run the numbers, and we'll put them in the show notes if we can.
I will ask.
Let's talk about the preliminary report from the Hong Kong Air Accident Investigation Authority, which released its preliminary report on the Air Act 747 freighter that veered off the runway in late October, striking a security vehicle and pushing it into the sea, killing both occupants of the security vehicle and totaling the 747. That preliminary report.
On the face of it, the report details something fairly straightforward as to why this happened. Planes generally don't veer off the runway for no particular reason. But in this case, there was a pretty obvious one. Engine number 4 throttle was pushed forward and engaged. So the engine was running full speed while the other 3 were in reverse operation. I phrased that badly. We're in reverse thrust. And that will do it. The why is now the part that everyone's going to focus on.
Exactly. Now we get to wait for the final report. But the preliminary report here lays out a sequence of events that begins with a normal landing as far as this aircraft is concerned. The one thing to note is that the aircraft was dispatched with the engine number 4 thrust reverser inoperative.
Which was cleared by the minimum equipment list, so that is not...
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. The 747-400F has a minimum equipment list that allows for that. It has actions that need to be taken when the aircraft is dispatched without the thrust reverser active. And as far as we know from the report, those actions were taken. So when they landed, they only deployed reverse thrust on engines number 2 and 3. So engine number 1 was selected to idle reverse. That makes perfect sense as far as wanting symmetrical thrust, as far as the aircraft slows down. I think one of the things that we should also note as...
I got to say, to clarify, those two and 3 are the inboard engines.
Yes. So what I was going to mention is that this is just like an A380 using reverse thrust, because the A380 does not have reverse thrust on the outboard engines for a variety of reasons, but mostly because reverse thrust doesn't actually do all that much to slow the plane down. In the grand scheme of things, the brakes on the wheels are what do most of slowing of the aircraft. There are requirements that aircraft be able to stop without reverse thrust. And so the reverse thrust is great to have. It slows the wear on the brakes, but it's not strictly necessary. So they deploy reverse thrust on engines 2 and 3. The crew received an auto brakes message on the ECAS system. The auto brake was disarmed, and the crew called for manual braking, and the captain took control of the aircraft. Then, engine number 4 accelerated to 90% of N1 forward thrust. And 5 seconds later, the active thrust reversers on engine numbers 2 and 3 were stowed. Engine number 4 continued to accelerate to 106% of N1, then 107% of N1, before the aircraft pushed the security vehicle into the sea and followed it into the bay as well. Reverse thrust was applied on engine number 2, then engines number 1 and 3, as the crew attempted to stop the aircraft after it had left the runway, but before it had gone into the sea. I guess, the main question here, not I guess, but the main question here is, what happened to engine number 4? What was the sequence? And this is one of those events where the cockpit voice recorder is likely going to be incredibly important to determining what happened and in what order.
Yeah, I suspect that the FDR is also going to be pretty instrumental, but I think putting that sequence together and combining it with the CVR almost certainly going to paint the picture for us.
With the preliminary reports out for the UPS MD-11 crash, the space debris or not in this case for United, and the Air Act 747, we now have the long wait for the final reports to find out the probable cause of all 3 of these. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll have whatever Jason and Seth have cooked up for us in Seoul. So stay with us. We'll be right back with those 2.
All right. I have no idea what Ian has been talking about earlier in this podcast, because I am in Seoul, South Korea, here with Seth Miller once again. Seth, say hello.
Hello.
Good to see you again in person. Seems like we only ever get to do that when we're on the other side of the planet around this time of year.
Highly recommended.
Yes, it's a very good break from being home. But this is our 3rd, 4th year in a row, I think, of something like that.
I think it's your 3rd. I missed last year, but we've done a nice every other pattern going on my end. But yeah, a little bit of Asia for Thanksgiving. We tried turkey yakitori a couple years ago. Did not actually happen. We had delicious sushi instead. We're going to try turkey tteokbokki this time, and it's also not going to happen, but we'll have delicious Korean food. So, yeah, we're making it happen.
Doing pretty well. So I booked this flight to Seoul from New York last January, basically as far out as you can possibly book a flight, because things were kind of grim right then, and I needed something to take my mind off it. So I booked a flight to Seoul, as one does. But we got here, I think what we're going to talk about is 2 topics, are very different experiences getting from the U.S. Northeast. Actually, you came from New York.
I did come from New York, yeah.
To Seoul, and also something you are doing to earn a whole lot of miles on JetBlue. What is supposed to be real quick turned out to not be so quick for you.
Almost enough points to pay for this trip.
Almost. There you go.
Which, when you hear how many miles it is, you'll be scared.
Yeah. But it's a really good experience you had.
Yeah.
So we'll start with that. We flew one day apart. I flew on a Saturday. You flew Sunday. I flew Korean Air on the Airbus A380 in economy. You did not. You did something very different.
I did not. I flew on the A350-1000 with Japan Airlines, and I flew in first class. And this is their newest new first class suite product. It's a 111 layout, super high walls and the door. The seat is rated for 3 passengers.
3?
3 during flight, not during taxi up and landing.
Where did the other passengers remain during the flight?
In the typical super premium layout, you have a person sitting, in the regular seat area, and then you have someone facing them. Buddy dining is typically.
But you all have to be first class passengers.
It's unclear to me how that would work.
Because I've always been unsure. Even in business class, some have like an
Can I
ottoman.
invite my friend over for?
Can you book first class and like your wife books economy, and then you just invite her up for the 15 hours?
I would imagine it wouldn't work for the full 15 hours, and for the dining, from a dining perspective, also, I would assume they would want
bring their economy meal forward,
right? Like they're not going to extricate her for. I have once been that guy. This is actually going back many a year. The BA A380 inaugural was from London to Los Angeles, and I flew very much in economy class but had met up with some people who were flying first class prior and went and sat down with them and did the buddy dining thing. And the crew was gracious enough to serve me champagne, but not
a meal.
There may have been some like snack bits or whatever, like, a tray of.
They've only got so many meals.
Right. There's no way they did a full meal.
You
definitely not wasted on me. But the nice part about that one, just as a random aside, was I had the champagne flute. And so as I walked back to my seat, I sort of stopped off in every business class galley along the way and got a refill. So I had quite a bit of champagne.
You have the flute. I couldn't have gotten that in economy, so you must belong there.
Basically was the game I played. But anyways, it's the JAL A350-1000 first class. It is their newest first class product. It's rolling out across, these newer planes, and it's insane. The service is, as you would expect, a somewhat over the top, very professional first class.
Performative, almost.
I wouldn't say performative, in that I think I would take performative as a pejorative. I think performative.
I meant that kind of in a positive of like, it's an experience and they make sure it's an experience.
Absolutely. I just don't think that's what performative means. Okay.
Fair enough.
I might be wrong. What do I know? But no, it was 100% start to finish, addressed by name the entire time, like that extra level of detail, just to make sure it feels very professional, but also a little bit friendly. And I think I will say that is one thing I often struggle with. I don't know that I do it very often, but when I fly premium cabin with an Asian airline versus premium cabin with a US airline, the experience of somewhat more formal.
Yes.
And I don't actually enjoy that as much. I kind of like to banter. And
they do not banter. No. I flew JAL also first class, but this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, so it was still the 777-300ER, which was, the product was fine, but it was very dated compared to this, but it was very much, the crew is amazing all over, basically everything, anticipating your needs, but there's no chit-chat.
Yeah, and over 15 hours, I prefer a little chit-chat, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a lovely experience. The food, very, very good. I will say, I didn't love some of the flavors on the second meal.
Same, yeah.
But
it's very Japanese.
Yeah.
Meal.
And
even out of New York, actually. So I flew the other way to New York in first, but you did it out of New York.
I did it out of New York.
Was the food still...
It's a U.S. menu, there's a Western menu or a Japan menu. And we had, I had the Japanese menu for the first meal, and it was great. Loved those flavors. The second meal also had the Japanese menu, and it was all cooked perfectly. It was all fine. It just wasn't. It ended up not being flavors that I particularly loved. So the Western menu for that meal also didn't look that great to me. Yeah. But I had a bunch of the snacks. Did enjoy all of those along the way. Chose not to have the caviar.
Why?
I don't particularly love caviar.
Yeah, but when in Rome,
when in an airplane in first class,
you kind of have to at least try it a little bit.
it's not served to everybody as like the starter, as some of the other airlines do. It's like an extra, it's an opt-in, like mid-cabin or mid-cabin.
I guess if you don't want to waste
snack.
it,
And so I wonder how much of it is, but because it's catered, don't they have to burn it when they land?
I guess so.
So it may be wasted anyways. There's all sorts of challenges around food once it leaves on international flights. Can it be reused or not? And generally the answer is no. So there's a lot of ways.
That'd be a shame to burn it.
Yeah. So in retrospect, maybe I should have had the caviar anyways.
For preservation. Like for eco-consciousness, you don't want to throw it away.
I would say one of the other interesting things that hits a 43-inch entertainment screen. It is insanely large.
That is extremely large.
4K. Oh yeah, it has to be. But you're sitting far enough away from it that it's reasonable to watch on that. In-flight internet worked better over North America than it did over the Asia and the Pacific, not surprisingly, just based on what we know of satellite coverage. They also have what's called euphony, which is the branding of a sort of in-headrest speaker system. So the wings of the headrest fold around your ears, and they have speakers in them with sort of built-in noise cancellation system.
Which we've tested and seen before at the Aircraft Interior Expo in Hamburg a number of times over the years. And it did kind of relatively quickly go from a concept, here's this thing, to it's actually flying on airplanes. Because some of these things have a long tail, and they take either 10 years to take off or they never do. But in this case, you actually got to try the thing.
It seemed like they were showing it off because they had finally sold it. Not to try to sell it. But it's an impressive performing thing, I will say. And I probably won't get to try it in business class. Because the first class seat is so wide, the headrest is very wide. And so I felt I could either get my left ear or my right ear to hear it. But it's not, I'm doing hand motions now because it's so Jason, but it's not winging.
So you're not getting like stereo.
It's not true stereo.
You're getting mono in either ear.
I had to sort of lean to one side to make it work. I also had a little bit of a problem with lag on the audio relative to the video, which I'm trying to figure out was real or not. If that was a one-off.
That'd be real weird because something there is wireless.
Yeah. But it's a very cool, the euphony thing is very cool. I'm a fan of that. I like the way it works. Again, very, very first world problems. Like the seat was too big.
First world, first class, literally first class problem.
Yeah, the seat was too big, so my headrest was too big, so my headphones
I'm
weren't
so sorry,
great.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, I look forward to my compensation.
Yes.
But yeah, it was an absolutely wonderful experience. We got off the flight. My wife was with me, obviously, and she was like, I don't know if we fully took advantage of it, but I also don't know what else I would do.
Yeah, at a point, like, it's still just a seat on an airplane that turns into a bed.
Right. And we ate, we slept, we were entertained. Like, it was all wonderful. But I do wonder if it's worth the price, so to speak, and as someone who definitely pays for it, myself, and it's not, except,
It's a one and done.
Yeah.
Having done it, I probably wouldn't ever do it again unless there was a spectacular fair sale or something like that.
And the bit that we alluded to earlier is almost getting my points back. I paid for it on points. I paid for it using JetBlue points, and it was 185,000 points per seat. So JetBlue is a relatively dollar-denominated valuation of points.
Yeah.
If you do the math on that, it's probably about somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 worth of points.
Which for
first class is a bargain.
Yeah, not
right?
bad.
You're getting a significant discount, but it is still a very expensive trip. So I was fortunate that I had the points. I've been collecting JetBlue points for 20-ish years now, but very much a one and done. I don't expect I would do it again.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, the reason that it was available is there was sort of a mistake in what inventory JetBlue had access to, and that's why we got two seats.
Whoops.
So I'm not complaining about that, but it was quite an experience.
So while you flew Airbus's newest, latest, greatest, literally I think the best product in the world, I don't think it really gets more high-end than JAL First Class A350-1000.
Yeah.
I flew Airbus's vision for the world's best economy class 20 years ago, which would be, I think it is actually like kind of 20 years ago at this point, but
conceptually probably.
Yeah, conceptually when this thing was put onto paper and things were actually being ordered, but the Korean Air Airbus A380 in economy, I think is honestly It may be a little dated, but it's as good as it is ever going to get in economy. There's like 33, 34 inches of pitch. The seat is 18 inches wide. And there's a power outlet, a screen from 2 decades ago, which, surprisingly worked. Was loaded with a lot of content. I could see it. It was fine, but it was just very interesting to nearly 20 years after inception to fly Airbus's grand vision for what flying in economy should be on a long-haul flight, which, by the way, was really, really long-haul because it was my longest ever flight in economy, and one of my longest flights ever. I think it clocked in at 15 hours, 40 minutes, something like that, New York to Seoul, which is longer than it used to be.
Yeah, the airspace closure over Russia certainly has made these trips a little longer. While I feel for you that yours was longer, mine was also longer than that flight normally would be, and I didn't mind at all.
Yeah, I think you're going to be okay. But in economy, it just kept going and going. And at one point, I was like, okay, we're probably like at least most of the way there. I'm like, oh no, we haven't even left Canadian airspace yet.
Yeah.
It just kept going. But it was okay. The food in economy, at least on Korean, was quite good, especially at a JFK. It always surprises me when you get food at a JFK that isn't terrible. But we actually flew, you and I, Korean in business, Boston to Seoul in 2019. Right. I believe I was served the same exact meal in economy as we were in business class, just plated differently. It was a bibimbap.
Yeah.
And I look back at my photos, it was the same exact dish, just, in a little metal tray instead of a plated dish, and then the soup, instead of being in styrofoam, was in an actual dish. But I swear it was the same exact meal.
Even portion size, you think?
Portion size? I'm pretty sure it was the same size, because I remember being a little upset in business class that the portion size was a little too small, but in economy it was like, wow, this is a pretty decent portion.
Yeah.
It really struck me how much of a difference there is perception-wise on simply how you are served an airplane meal of how premium or not the meal is.
A ceramic bowl.
Made a lot of difference.
Yeah.
So that is how we got to Seoul. Now, with the next few minutes, I want to talk about JetBlue 25 for 25, because you are one of the probably select few crazy people that are crazy enough to do it.
We're saying crazy complimentary, I assume.
Yeah, sure. What is it? How far along are you? And what is the reward?
So 25 for 25, JetBlue is celebrating its 25th anniversary as an airline. And each year they do a couple little things usually around their birthday. But this year they've done something somewhat over the top, which is for the 25th anniversary, if you visit 25 different airport destinations.
Visit meaning fly into.
Arrive to. And so departures do not count. That made this a bit more complicated for me. If you arrive at 25 unique airports on JetBlue flights, you get 25 years of Mosaic status, which is it's the lowest tier of their elite status, Mosaic 1, but you get 25 years of status. It's about the closest they'll ever get to lifetime status, it would seem. And there are other milestones. At 15 cities, you get 150,000 points.
That's not nothing.
That's not nothing. At 20 cities, you get an additional 200,000 points. That's where the real value proposition flips. Typically speaking, as I mentioned earlier, they're sort of dollar-based points. And so you get sort of paying off the ticket, generally speaking, happens at around the 20 destinations. That's 350,000 total points. And so almost enough to pay for 2 first-class tickets on JAL. And then, of course, the 5 more destinations gets you the 25 years of Mosaic status. I am at 23.
23, and you've struggled.
I have struggled.
You had an inauspicious start on day 0.
Day 0 was bad. Well, day 1 became day negative 10.
It was day 0 because you never went anywhere.
I never went anywhere. I wasn't going to do it, and then finally one day I went and looked and booked out across the 3 months that it was going to take. I actually booked all of my flights all at once.
I may have goaded you into it a little bit.
You absolutely goaded me into it. And I had a plan. It was a pretty good plan. I knew it wasn't going to go perfectly, but I had a plan.
Well, you're flying JetBlue at least 25 times. It's not going to go to plan. It will never go to plan with JetBlue.
No airline will. And then the shutdown definitely got in the way as well. And
the government shutdown.
Yes. But I had everything booked. I showed up at Logan to start one day, and my first day had a combination weather and mechanical delay, and everything got thrown out of whack. And I finally walked off the airplane. They had to get off the airplane because of the mechanical, and I started to figure out how I was going to rebook everything, and I just canceled it. I had 5 different destinations booked that first weekend over 36 hours, and I called in to the agent. I was like, hi, cancel all my trips for the next 2 days. I'm done. And I went home, and I actually wasn't sure I was going to rebook them. I thought about canceling everything.
You almost threw in the towel before
it even started. I'm happy I didn't, I think. I rebooked different routings to get all of those cities back and finish it. I was very close 2 weeks ago. I was sitting in Detroit in the middle of the government shutdown with a plan to fly from Detroit to JFK to Fort Myers, Florida, and then the next morning fly from Orlando to Manchester, New Hampshire. I had to get from Fort Myers to Orlando, but that was a separate thing. And the government shutdown and other airspace challenges meant that my flight to JFK was so delayed I was going to miss the onward connection. And so after sitting in the Detroit airport for 9 hours, I eventually made it back to Boston at least.
In the North Terminal.
In the less nice of the terminals. And I'm still 2 airports short. Fortunately,
there's a plan, right?
There's a plan. I have already booked. My replacement flight is from Manchester down to Fort Myers and back. So I'll get the same 2 airports. It is booked for a Thursday in the next few weeks. I have also booked it for the following Thursday to hedge my bets.
Because you have to do it by the end of the year.
You have to do it by the end of the year. It started at the end of June. June 25th was the first day. And interesting thing is you don't have to register for this promotion. It's just like
automatic.
They keep track of it for you.
So are there some people who are just like diehard like business travelers on JetBlue? It will just happen.
I think just happening to get all 25 would be uncommon. I think there's a chance there's going to be some random person that has 15 and it's like, wait, why did they give me all these points? What happened? And not really know what was going on. And it definitely, there is a sense I get that within the airline, not everybody knows what it is and that it's happening. As it has sort of grown and as people are doing it more and more, the cabin crew, the gate agents, they're picking up on it more. And there's definitely a growing sense of, understanding it and getting behind it and being supportive of it. I will say the overall sense of how many people are doing it remains unknown.
It's got to be pretty low, right?
I would assume so. Some early estimates from JetBlue were in the couple thousand, like 1,000 to 2,000 people.
That's more than I would have figured.
I am in a WhatsApp group with 250 of them.
Oh.
So either we're like 25% of the group or it's actually much bigger than we thought. I will say now I go out of my way when I'm flying, sort of look around. And the other day I flew into Orlando and walking through the JetBlue wing of Terminal C in Orlando, start looking around and people have got T-shirts made, sweatshirts made. And so you see people doing it. And I am from time to time a sociable and friendly person. And so I'll walk over like, hey, what number are you on? Where are you going? What's up? And have those fun conversations. And so it has very much like the all-you-can-jet promotion they did in 2006, 2007, 2008, has become a sort of a community of people doing these things. And all-you-can-jet really blossomed around Twitter at the time. This seems to be more, there's some Discord groups, there's a WhatsApp group.
Less centralized.
But there's still an active sort of community going around this. I've seen a lot of people posting on Instagram and or TikTok, and JetBlue's social media team is interacting with them. They are definitely working to make it a thing. But again, I still think it's a relatively small number of people. But as you said, more than you probably expected.
Yeah. One last question, I guess.
Yes.
JetBlue is not an airline that is built for connections.
Correct.
It's not really a thing. How have you worked around that? And I guess that's a 2-part question. Which is the hardest airport you have tried to work in that has just been a pain to do but was necessary?
I will say I have managed to do all of my 25, save for one, in the Eastern time zone.
Oh, Detroit, Michigan is in the Eastern time zone.
Yes, I heard that for 9 hours. So with the exception of a Denver flight, which I was on my way to work anyways out on the West Coast, and I booked it, and I needed to connect anyway, so fine, Denver worked. All of my trips have been East Coast and all in the Eastern time zone, so mostly north-south to and from Florida.
So I guess there's enough frequency that really connection's not really an issue. It's just they're there.
That's the general idea of how I approached it, and I did that trying to get lower pricing. What I will say is I ended up booking things like a Buffalo to Raleigh or something like that via JFK or via Boston to save money. So you get a cheaper ticket because you're flying Buffalo to Raleigh instead of Buffalo to JFK and then JFK to Raleigh. That made it complicated. And doing multi-city bookings, like if I wanted to fly Boston to Buffalo, Buffalo to Raleigh, Raleigh to Detroit, Detroit to Boston, which is almost one of the trips I did. JetBlue will sometimes book those, but not always, and will not book them using points. And I did most of my bookings using TrueBlue points, knowing that I'd get them paid back.
Right.
JetBlue does not allow multi-city bookings via points.
So
and you can't
how
pay
much do you have in JetBlue credit right now from forfeited flights?
I have had a lot of 560s credited back to my account over the past couple months. I had a upcoming personal trip where I cashed it all in. But I was up near $200 at one point in $5.60 credits from booking things and changing, booking and canceling, recovering, swapping things around. So I think I've done this relatively at the cheaper end of the game. I know some people have done it like 7 or 8 days, 9 days, something like that, which is basically nonstop.
The first guy who did it in like less than a week.
Yeah,
it was first announced. Like, I didn't know how that's possible.
He was like, oh, I guess I could do this, and just started flying. And like, I think he was booking the next flight while he was on the plane to whatever destination it was and sort of mapping it out from there.
It's one way to do it.
It's a lot of walk-up tickets. It's definitely more expensive that way, but makes for an interesting story. I chose not to do red eyes because I don't want to sleep on the plane. And I chose not to do too many overnights where I didn't have to. And I actually had another one early in the trip. I was flying into Tampa and was delayed 3 hours, missed my Tampa to
You ended up on Spirit, didn't you?
I ended up buying a walk-up ticket on Spirit. Had to walk, and almost missed that. We were so delayed, but walked across the terminal from the JetBlue gate to the Spirit gate, which was in the same area, and I made it. So, there's been plenty of juggling things along the way.
All's well that nearly ends.
I promise I will text you and let you know when I'm done.
Excellent. Well, Seth Miller, we're about to go out to dinner.
Yes.
But thank you so much for joining us so last minute and unplanned here. But tell us where we can find you, because you have your own podcast.
I have my own podcast called Dots, Lines, and Destinations. Me and Stephen and Foz talk about frequent flyer points and stupid travels that we do on the regular. So you can find us at Dots, Lines, and Destinations. I also write at paxx.aero, P-A-X-E-X for passenger experience, .A-E-R-O. And I am wanderme.paxx.aero on Blue Sky, which is spelled wrong and hard to find, but I'm there.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for joining.
Always a pleasure.
And catch me on Dots, Lines, and Destinations almost certainly in the next week, too.
I would assume so.
All right. Thanks for joining.
Just need some more beer first.
Let's go.
Welcome back. I'm sure whatever they had to say was exciting.
Oh, thrilling.
We don't know what it was, but I'm sure it was wonderful.
I'm on the edge of my seat right now.
The dangers of recording at different times, thanks to time zones. But good for Jason and Seth for finding time to write in. And we will get ready to close the show. But before we go on this Thanksgiving week, Jeremy, we, I think, can give thanks for, I'm not sure what possessed them to do this, but I'm not going to be upset about it. Lufthansa has decided that one 100th anniversary special livery is not nearly enough. And to paraphrase the famous line from Contact, why build one when you can build 6 for 6 times the price?
And they took that to heart when they decided to announce that they're going to put the 100-year livery on at least one aircraft, pretty much everything in their fleet. Not at least one. One aircraft and everything in their fleet.
We've got the 787-9 is already painted. We're also going to get an A380, a 747-8, an A350-900, an A350-1000, and because someone may have felt bad, an A320neo.
Note that there's one missing, 2 missing technically.
There are a few missing. There will be no A340s painted in the special 100th anniversary livery. And given everything we talked about last week, it's a real shame.
It is.
And I know John Walton was not in a good way. about this news. So apologies to last week's guest, John. But seeing these, the renderings, because they've only painted one and we haven't seen it fly yet in any meaningful capacity. But seeing these renderings, it just looks incredible in the air. And I cannot wait to see the first one perform a banking turn on takeoff, to really see the wings match up between the crane and the aircraft, because the design of these is just really, really good looking.
It's really something. It's absolutely going to be one of those aircraft. And when I started out plane spotting, I'd be at the airport every other day. I think the first year I moved out to Seattle, I went something like 187 days. That's not really how often I go anymore. But this will get me, if it comes within a 200-mile radius, I will go. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It's going to be the thing really that everybody wants to see. Kudos to Lufthansa for giving us a Thanksgiving gift.
Yes,
that will be appreciated by spotters the world round. It's going to be so good looking, especially the 747. Oh, please.
It looks the rendering is just absolutely incredible. Which there's a link in the show notes if you want to drool on your phone or something like that. Don't feel bad. It's perfectly acceptable.
Absolutely.
We will close this episode by wishing those celebrating this week a happy Thanksgiving, a restful period, hopefully after the festivities when the podcast comes out and you can listen to this while you either do all of your shopping or avoid it like the plague. Either one is perfectly acceptable. Just good luck doing either one of those. Jeremy Dwyer-Lindgren, a aviation journalist, historian, lover of all things that fly that I probably wouldn't fly, and wonderful human being for stepping in this week for traveling Jason. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so very much.
Thank you as always for having me. Pleasure to join you.
This has been episode 347 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, joined once again with
Jason Rabinowitz.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you next week.